Act 1. The perfect facade and the hidden monster. Picture the perfect suburban mother. She has a manicured lawn, a husband who works in finance, 2 teenage daughters, and a beloved local advice column where she helps her neighbors navigate the messy, quiet struggles of everyday life. She is the woman everyone turns to when their world is falling apart. But what if, beneath that warm, maternal smile, her mind is operating like a highly advanced, cold-blooded computer? What if her private diary drafts don't suggest talking out family issues, but rather drugging her husband with homegrown toxins, or driving a sewing needle straight through a predator's eardrum to silence him forever? Welcome to Quiet Books, the place where we pull back the curtain on the darkest psychological thrillers, dissecting every hidden clue, decoding every shocking twist, and explaining the brilliant, twisted endings that leave you staring at the wall in silence. Today, we are diving deep into Freida McFadden's masterclass in suburban dread, Dear Debbie. On the surface, Debbie Mullen is the pride of Hingham, Massachusetts. She is polite, organized, and deeply devoted to her family. But as we unravel this story, you will realize that Debbie is not just a housewife. She is a highly calculated, deeply traumatized vigilante who has turned her quiet suburban neighborhood into her own personal chessboard. And today, we are going to break down exactly how she played the game, how she executed the perfect crime, and why the ending of this thriller is far more terrifying than anyone realizes. Our story begins on a deceptively normal Wednesday morning, but McFadden immediately drops a visual warning that tells us violence is already brewing beneath the surface of this perfect life. Debbie is preparing for a major milestone. Home Gardening magazine is sending a crew to photograph her backyard. She wants everything to be flawless. She selects a brand new white dress, but as she zips it up and looks in the mirror, she freezes. The dress has an abstract pattern of bright red splotches. To anyone else, it is modern fashion. To Debbie, and to us, the audience, it looks exactly like fresh bloodstains. In a psychological thriller, visual cues are never accidents. This dress is a physical manifestation of the blood that is about to be spilled on her pristine green grass. Almost immediately, we see the cracks in Debbie's suburban paradise. Her family is a pressure cooker of unspoken secrets. Her eldest daughter, Lexi, walks into the kitchen and completely ignores her, treating her mother with a cold, silent hostility. Her younger daughter, Izzy, rushes out the door, skipping the breakfast Debbie spent time preparing. But before Izzy can escape, a devastating secret slips out. She has been kicked off the varsity soccer team. Izzy is absolutely terrified. She begs her mother not to call her coach, Coach Robert Pike, pleading with her to just let it go. Debbie, playing the role of the comforting mother, gently promises that she won't call him. But pay close attention to her wording. Debbie is a master of technicalities and loopholes. She immediately decides that she won't call the coach. She will confront him in person. Her protective maternal instincts are instantly warped by a dark, controlling urge. And that urge only intensifies when Lexi drops a sickening rumor. Coach Pike is a predator. He has a habit of accidentally walking into the girls' locker room while they are changing. Already, the stakes are set. We have a mother who refuses to let anyone harm her children, and a predatory figure operating in plain sight. But the tension in the Mullen household does not stop with the children. Enter Cooper, Debbie's husband. On paper, Cooper is the perfect, supportive spouse. He is an accountant, steady, reliable, and mild-mannered. But look closely at his behavior. As they sit in the kitchen, his phone rings. The moment Cooper looks at the screen, his face completely drains of color. It is a physical reaction of pure panic. He quickly angles the screen away from Debbie's watchful eyes, silences the call, and shoves the phone deep into his pocket. He claims it is just a spam call, and that his anxiety is simply due to an upcoming partnership meeting with his boss, Ken Bryant. But his shifty body language and his refusal to look Debbie in the eye tell a completely different story. Cooper is hiding something massive, and Debbie's internal radar is already locked onto him. Cooper is not the only one keeping secrets in this neighborhood. Suddenly, the peace of the morning is shattered when their neighbor, Brett, storms onto the porch. Brett is furious. He is a loud, obnoxious man who plays his music at deafening volumes, and he is pointing a finger directly at Debbie. He accuses her of sneaking into his basement the previous night and completely destroying his fuse box to silence his music. Watch how Debbie reacts. She does not scream, she does not get defensive. Instead, she slips effortlessly into the persona of the clueless, fragile, sweet-talking housewife. She offers him a warm smile, speaks in a soft, soothing tone, and easily redirects the blame to local teenagers. She plays the victim of a misunderstanding so perfectly that Brett actually begins to doubt himself. But underneath the hem of her perfect white dress, inside her pocket, Debbie's hand is tightly gripping a sharp, heavy box cutter. She was prepared to use it if Brett stepped over the line. Later, when Brett confronts Cooper on the front lawn, he drops a chilling warning that the audience needs to remember. He tells Cooper that his wife didn't just flip a switch, but she completely destroyed the wiring, warning him that she is dangerous. And Brett is absolutely right. Debbie is not just a housewife who got lucky with an advice column. She is an MIT computer science dropout with an IQ of 178. She is a woman of immense, unused intellectual power, and she has channeled that intelligence into a highly advanced, privately coded tracking app called Findly. Debbie has secretly installed Findly on her daughter's and husband's phones. It does not just show her their real-time GPS locations. It allows her to download their entire movement history, mapping out their lives with mathematical precision. She justifies this extreme invasion of privacy as maternal protection, telling herself she is just keeping her family safe. But in reality, it is pure obsessive control. Debbie cannot tolerate a variable she cannot predict. She must know everything. On this beautiful Wednesday morning, the absolute control Debbie has fought so hard to maintain begins to shatter in rapid succession. First, her phone rings. It is her boss at the local newspaper, Garrett Mears. He does not want to talk about her next column. Instead, he demands an urgent, mysterious, face-to-face meeting at the office. Before she can even process this, the clock strikes 10, and the home gardening magazine photographers fail to show up. Debbie's backyard is pristine. Her blood-splotched dress is pressed, but the street is empty. When a desperate, humiliated Debbie finally calls the magazine's head office, the receptionist delivers a shocking blow. There is no photo shoot scheduled. The journalist who set it up has completely ghosted her. Why is Debbie's carefully constructed world suddenly falling apart? Who is calling her husband in secret? And what is Debbie actually growing in her prized garden? A garden she admits features beautiful, exotic flowers that she can never, under any circumstances, allow anyone to truly identify. As we move deeper into the story, the answers to these questions will reveal a web of betrayal, trauma, and cold-blooded vengeance that will keep you guessing until the very last second. Act 2. Petty Wars and Chemical Warfare. When Nita Geisler, the representative from the gardening magazine, calls Debbie to officially cancel the photo shoot, it isn't just a professional disappointment. It is a calculated, deeply personal humiliation. Debbie soon discovers the horrifying truth. Her neighbor, Joe Dolan, intercepted the magazine crew on the street. Joe, a smug, wealthy woman who has always looked down on Debbie, showed off her own classic, perfectly manicured rose garden and stole the feature right out from under Debbie's nose. This is the petty, suffocating reality of suburban rivalry. But in Debbie's mind, this is an act of war. Humiliated, angry, and seeking a momentary escape from the pressure building inside her head, Debbie reaches for a bottle of expensive Pinot wine hidden above her refrigerator. She needs a drink to calm her nerves. But when she uncorks the bottle and takes a deep swig, she gets a physical shock. There is no alcohol. It is warm, tasteless tap water. Someone has secretly drunk her wine and refilled the bottle with water to hide the theft. Instantly, Debbie's mind jumps to the easiest target: Zane, the teenage boyfriend of her eldest daughter, Lexi. Zane is a loud, disrespectful boy who spent the previous evening at their house. It's a subtle but vital clue for the audience. In Debbie's mind, she is always the target of outside forces, completely oblivious to the fact that the real threats to her family are already growing within her own walls. Furious and seeking a target for her rage, Debbie walks down the street to confront Joe Dolan. Joe is standing in her yard, basking in her victory. When Debbie approaches, Joe doesn't offer an apology. Instead, she smugly rubs salt in the wound. She calls Debbie's garden pathetic, mocks her blood-stained dress, and tells her she never stood a chance. And it's during this confrontation that we see the first major psychological red flag in Debbie's character. As Joe mocks her, a strange physical buzzing starts inside Debbie's head. It is a deafening, vibrating noise that drowns out the world, a physical manifestation of her losing control. Debbie's voice drops to a cold, flat whisper. She warns Joe that what goes around comes around, but Joe just laughs and slams the front door in her face. Pay close attention to what Debbie does next. A normal person would go home and cry, or perhaps complain to their husband. But Debbie is not normal. She immediately drives to a local nursery. She doesn't buy flowers. Instead, she purchases refills for Japanese beetle traps. But here is the catch. She doesn't buy the actual traps. She only buys the potent chemical pheromone lures. These lures are designed to attract thousands of destructive beetles to a single location. It is a silent, devastating biological weapon disguised as a gardening tool. While waiting in a painfully slow checkout line at the nursery, the universe tests Debbie's patience once again. A rude, aggressive woman pushes past her, cutting directly in front of her in line. The buzzing in Debbie's head intensifies to a deafening, painful pitch. The noise is screaming at her to react. Debbie steps forward. She doesn't yell. Instead, she confronts the stranger with a cold, quiet, terrifying intensity, staring directly into her eyes with a look of pure, unadulterated menace. The sheer force of Debbie's silent rage forces the woman to back away in genuine fear, muttering the word psychopath under her breath as she flees the line. Instantly, the buzzing in Debbie's head stops. The silence is beautiful. In this moment, Debbie realizes a dark, fundamental truth about herself. Taking control, asserting dominance, and punishing those who cross her is the only thing that silences the noise in her mind. It is her drug. Meanwhile, her husband Cooper is facing a crisis of his own, and his desperation is about to collide with Debbie's need for control. Urged by Debbie to finally stand up for himself and demand a partnership at his accounting firm, Cooper meets with his cold, unyielding boss, Ken Bryant. But Cooper is not a leader. He is a worker bee, a man who has spent his life avoiding conflict. When he tries to demand the partnership, Ken looks at him with utter contempt. He tells Cooper exactly what he thinks of him. He is replaceable, weak, and lucky to even have a desk. In a desperate, panicked bluff, Cooper threatens to resign, fully expecting Ken to back down and offer him the partnership to keep him. Instead, Ken accepts his resignation on the spot. He tells Cooper to pack his things and get out. Now, Cooper is unemployed, facing immediate financial ruin and utterly terrified of telling his wife. He is trapped by his own secrets. And if we look closely at the Dear Debbie advice column drafts that Debbie keeps hidden on her computer, the dark, suffocating reality of their household begins to leak through the screen. In one draft, a reader writes in, complaining about a husband who exercises absolute financial control, a man who demands verbal approval for every single purchase, keeps his wife on a microscopic allowance, and reacts with fury at the mere suggestion of her getting a job. Debbie's drafted response is dark, suggesting the wife take control by any means necessary. Cooper's desperation isn't just about professional pride, it's about survival. He knows that if Debbie finds out he has lost his income, the fragile power dynamic of their marriage will shatter, and he has no idea what she will do to him. But while Cooper is losing control, Debbie is actively seizing it in other areas of her life. She decides to attend her neighborhood book club, hosted at the luxurious mansion of Rochelle, the reigning queen of Hingham's social scene. Debbie brings along her new gym friend, Harley, a young, stunningly beautiful woman who seems to hang on Debbie's every word. Rochelle's book club is not about literature. It is a blood sport. Rochelle and her wealthy friends, Sloane and Tabitha, immediately begin taking passive-aggressive jabs at Debbie. They mock her intellect, make snide remarks about her lack of a college degree, and make it clear she doesn't belong in their social circle. But Debbie has brought lunch. She presents a platter of beautiful homemade turkey and avocado sandwiches. Only hours earlier, while working out at the gym, Harley had casually mentioned to Debbie that she has a severe, life-threatening avocado allergy. Yet Debbie accidentally forgot this vital piece of information. She apologizes profusely to Harley, meaning Harley cannot touch the food. Debbie, claiming solidarity with her friend, doesn't eat any either. But Rochelle, Sloane, and Tabitha dig in, praising the delicious lunch. Within minutes, the atmosphere in the room shifts. The smug smiles fade. Rochelle turns a sickly pale shade of green. She clutches her stomach, her eyes wide with sudden, violent panic, before sprinting to the bathroom. The sound of her vomiting violently echoes through the mansion, so intense that she knocks over a bottle of expensive champagne. Within seconds, Sloane and Tabitha are also clutching their stomachs, groaning in agony, before fleeing the house in a desperate rush to find a restroom. As Harley watches the chaos unfold, suspecting a sudden case of severe food poisoning, she notices something that makes her spine tingle. Debbie is standing in the middle of the sickness and panic, completely unaffected. She isn't worried. She isn't trying to help. She is standing perfectly still, with a serene, satisfied smile playing on her lips. For Debbie, this isn't a medical emergency. It is a successful execution of justice. She has quietly poisoned the women who insulted her, and she has done it so cleanly that they will blame the mayonnaise, never suspecting the quiet housewife who brought the platter. Act 3. Poisoned tea and secret alliances. The book club poisoning is a perfect demonstration of Debbie's methodology. She doesn't use blunt force. She uses the environment, chemistry, and human nature against her targets. But her satisfaction is short-lived. When she returns home, she is forced to face the mysterious summons from her editor, Garrett Mears. She drives to the newspaper office, her mind racing with possibilities. Is her column being canceled? Is she being laid off? When she sits down across from Garrett, he doesn't hand her a pink slip. Instead, he slides a printed email across the desk. The email is anonymous, sent from a secure, untraceable account. The contents are terrifying. The sender claims to know the real identity of Dear Debbie. They claim that Debbie Mullen is not a sweet, helpful housewife, but a fraud, a manipulator, and a dangerous woman who has committed multiple crimes. The writer threatens to expose her past to the entire town if she doesn't step down from the column immediately. Debbie's heart hammers against her ribs, but her face remains a mask of calm. She laughs it off, telling Garrett it is just a bitter troll, a jealous reader who didn't like her advice. Garrett wants to believe her, but he warns her that the newspaper cannot afford a scandal. If another letter comes, or if the writer provides proof, he will have no choice but to suspend her column. Debbie leaves the office with a cold, hard knot of panic in her stomach. Someone is watching her. Someone knows what she is. But who? She immediately opens her laptop and boots up her tracking software, Findly. She needs to look for anomalies, variables she has missed. She pulls up Cooper's location history. On paper, Cooper was at his accounting firm all day. But as Debbie looks at the digital map, her eyes narrow. The GPS coordinates don't lie. Cooper didn't go to his office. Instead, he spent 3 hours parked outside a cheap, run-down motel on the edge of town. Debbie's mind instantly leaps to the most logical, painful conclusion. Cooper is having an affair. The secret phone calls, the panic when his phone rang, the sudden distance, it all fits. The perfect husband is cheating on her. And the betrayal cuts deeper than anyone could imagine, because Debbie has sacrificed everything to build this perfect life. She gave up her career, her potential, and her freedom to be the perfect wife, and Cooper is throwing it away in a cheap motel room. But Debbie does not confront him. Confrontation gives the target a chance to lie, to prepare, to defend themselves. Debbie prefers to gather intelligence. She sets a trap. That evening, while Cooper is in the shower, she sneaks into the hallway and grabs his phone. She uses his thumbprint, which she gently presses onto the sensor while he is asleep later that night, to unlock it. She scrolls through his messages, searching for the name of the mistress. But what she finds is far more confusing and far more dangerous. There are no romantic texts, no secret photos. Instead, there are dozens of messages from an unsaved number, demanding money. The messages are threatening, warning Cooper that his time is running out, and that if he doesn't pay the full amount by the end of the week, she will find out everything. Is Cooper being blackmailed? And if so, for what? Debbie's analytical mind begins to piece together the puzzle, but before she can solve it, she has to deal with a more immediate, visceral threat: Coach Robert Pike. Debbie has been tracking Coach Pike's movements using public schedules and local gossip. She knows he spends his Thursday evenings alone in his office at the high school, long after the students and other staff members have gone home. He thinks he is safe in his little kingdom. He thinks he can continue targeting young girls, like her daughter Izzy, with impunity. He has no idea that the mother of one of his victims is about to walk through his door. The scene at the high school is dripping with atmospheric suspense. The hallways are dark, silent, and echoing with the distant hum of the ventilation system. Debbie slips through the side door, which she has left propped open with a small pebble earlier in the day. She is wearing dark, nondescript clothing, gloves, and a medical mask. She moves like a shadow, her footsteps making no sound on the polished linoleum floors. When she reaches Coach Pike's office, she sees him through the glass window. He is sitting at his desk, watching game footage on his computer, a smug, self-satisfied look on his face. Debbie doesn't knock. She simply opens the door and steps inside, closing it quietly behind her. Pike looks up, startled. He doesn't recognize her at first, but then he smiles, a condescending, greasy smile. He asks her what she is doing there, telling her the school is closed. Debbie doesn't answer. She walks slowly toward his desk. The buzzing in her head is starting, a low, vibrating hum that demands action. Pike's smile fades as he realizes something is deeply wrong. He stands up, trying to use his height and physical presence to intimidate her. He demands that she leave immediately, or he will call security. But Debbie is already moving. With lightning speed, she reaches into her pocket and pulls out a small, heavy object. It is a heavy-duty, industrial stapler she grabbed from the reception desk on her way in. Before Pike can react, she swings it with all her strength, striking him hard across the temple. The blow is devastating. Pike staggers backward, his eyes rolling back in his head, before collapsing heavily onto the floor, semi-conscious and bleeding from a deep gash on his forehead. He groans, trying to push himself up. But Debbie is already on top of him. She pins his arms with her knees, her weight surprisingly heavy, her movements precise and practiced. She reaches into her pocket once more and pulls out a long, gleaming sewing needle. This is the moment where Debbie's true, terrifying nature is fully revealed. She doesn't hesitate. She doesn't show a flicker of mercy or doubt. She looks down at the groveling, terrified predator with a face of pure, cold stone. She leans down, her voice a soft, chilling whisper in his ear. She tells him that if he ever looks at her daughters again, if he ever steps foot in Hingham again, she won't just ruin his career, she will end his life. And then, to ensure he understands the gravity of her warning, she drives the needle straight through his ear canal. The scream is muffled by her gloved hand, a desperate, agonizing sound that is swallowed by the empty school walls. Pike convulses in agony, his world spinning into a vortex of white-hot pain. When Pike finally releases him, he is weeping, clutching his bleeding ear, completely broken. She stands over him, adjusting her clothing, her breathing calm and steady. The buzzing in her head has stopped. The silence is beautiful once again. She leaves him there, bleeding and terrified, knowing he will never speak a word of what happened. To admit to the attack would be to invite an investigation into his own predatory behavior, and Pike is a coward. He will run. He will leave town, just as Debbie planned. She has protected her daughter, she has punished a monster, and she has done it all without leaving a single trace of evidence. Act 4. The Web of Betrayal. But as Debbie walks back to her car, the high of her victory is instantly crushed by a notification on her phone. It is from Finley. Cooper's phone is on the move again, and this time, he isn't going to a motel. He is heading toward a familiar address. Debbie watches the little blue dot on the screen crawl across the digital map of Hingham, her heart freezing as she realizes where he is going. He is parking outside the house of Harley, her gym friend. The pieces of the puzzle suddenly slam together in Debbie's mind with the force of a physical blow. The secret calls, the shifty behavior, the hotel meetings. Cooper isn't just having an affair with a stranger. He is sleeping with Harley, the young, beautiful woman Debbie welcomed into her life, the woman she thought was her friend. But the betrayal goes even deeper. Debbie remembers the anonymous email Garrett showed her. The writer claimed to know everything about her. How could a stranger know so much? How could they know her private routines, her past, her secrets? Because Cooper knew, and Cooper told Harley. The realization is a sickening, dizzying revelation. Harley didn't become Debbie's friend because she liked her. She targeted Debbie. She used her to get close to Cooper, and together, they have been planning to destroy her. They want her out of the picture. They want her money, her house, her life. And they are using the anonymous letters to blackmail her, to force her to step down, to break her spirit until she has nothing left. Debbie sits in her dark car, the steering wheel gripping tightly in her hands. The buzzing in her head returns, but this time, it isn't a low hum. It is a roaring, deafening siren of pure, unadulterated rage. Her husband, the man she protected, the man she built a life with, has allied himself with a viper to destroy her. But they have made a fatal mistake. They forgot who they are dealing with. They think Debbie is just a housewife. They have no idea they are playing a game with an MIT-trained genius who has spent years mastering the art of silent, invisible warfare. Debbie drives home, her mind operating like a supercomputer, calculating every variable, planning her next moves. She needs to gather physical proof of their alliance. She needs to know exactly what they are planning, and she needs to ensure that when she strikes, the blow is final. The next morning, Debbie begins her counteroffensive. She starts by investigating her own home. If Cooper and Harley are working together, they must be communicating, and they must have left physical traces. She searches Cooper's home office, a room she usually avoids to maintain the illusion of his privacy. She systematically dismantles his desk, checking behind drawers, underneath files, and inside empty book jackets. And in a hollowed-out book on the bottom shelf, she finds it. A burner phone. She powers it on. There is only one contact saved in the phone. H. Debbie opens the message history, and the full, horrifying scope of their conspiracy is laid bare. It is far worse than a simple affair. Cooper and Harley have been tracking Debbie's finances. They know about the massive inheritance Debbie received from her late aunt, a trust fund that is locked in Debbie's name only, a fund that Cooper cannot touch unless Debbie is dead or declared mentally incompetent.
The messages detail their plan. Harley has been feeding Cooper information on how to slowly gaslight Debbie, how to make her look unstable, paranoid, and dangerous. The anonymous letters to the newspaper were just the first step. They wanted to create a public record of Debbie's erratic behavior. And the final step? The messages are chillingly clear. Harley has been urging Cooper to speed up the process. She has been telling him to use the special ingredient she provided, to put it in Debbie's daily tea, to make her look like she had a sudden, tragic mental breakdown and took her own life. Debbie stares at the screen, her face pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of horror and cold, calculating satisfaction. They aren't just trying to divorce her. They are trying to murder her. And then she remembers the Pinot wine bottle, the warm, tasteless tap water. It wasn't Lexi's boyfriend Zane who drank the wine. It was Cooper. He had been using the bottle to hide something, or perhaps he and Harley had shared it in the house while Debbie was out. But more importantly, Debbie realizes what the special ingredient is. She walks out to her prized garden, the garden she has spent years cultivating. The garden that features beautiful, exotic, and highly toxic plants. She walks past the roses, past the hydrangeas, straight to the back corner, where a patch of beautiful, bell-shaped purple flowers grows in the shade. Foxglove, Digitalis purpurea, a highly toxic plant that, when ingested in small, controlled doses, causes confusion, nausea, and irregular heartbeats. In larger doses, it causes complete cardiac arrest, a heart attack that looks entirely natural to an unsuspecting coroner. Debbie looks closely at the soil around the foxglove plants. The earth has been recently disturbed. Someone has been harvesting the leaves. Cooper has been stealing the poison from her own garden, using her own beloved plants to slowly kill her. The irony is delicious, but Debbie's reaction is not one of fear. It is one of pure, predatory excitement. Cooper and Harley have handed her the perfect weapon. They have created a paper trail of blackmail. They have bought burner phones. They have harvested poison. And they have planned a murder. All Debbie has to do is rewrite the script. Act 5. The mastermind's final move and ending explained. The climax of Dear Debbie is a masterclass in tension, a slow-burning dinner party where every word spoken has a double meaning, and every gesture is a matter of life and death. Debbie invites Harley over for a quiet, intimate dinner at the Mullen house. She claims she wants to thank Harley for being such a supportive friend during this stressful week, and she wants Cooper to finally meet the woman who has been helping her through her hard times. Cooper is visibly terrified when he hears about the dinner. He tries to protest, claiming he has too much work, but Debbie insists, her voice sweet, gentle, and utterly unyielding. He has no choice but to agree. When Harley arrives, she is wearing a stunning, expensive dress, her smile bright and confident. She thinks she has already won. She thinks Debbie is a clueless victim walking straight into her trap. The dinner is served in the formal dining room. The atmosphere is suffocatingly tense. Cooper sits at the head of the table, sweating profusely, his eyes darting nervously between his wife and his mistress. Harley sits across from Debbie, playing the role of the sweet, supportive friend perfectly, offering gentle words of comfort about the stressful rumors going around town. Debbie has prepared a beautiful meal, a rich, savory beef stew, accompanied by a bottle of expensive red wine. But pay close attention to the drinks.
Before dinner, Debbie prepares a pot of chamomile tea. She claims she has been feeling anxious and needs something to calm her nerves. She pours 3 cups. She places 1 in front of Harley, 1 in front of Cooper, and keeps 1 for herself. As they sit down to eat, Debbie raises her glass of wine for a toast. She toasts to friendship, to loyalty, and to the importance of family. Cooper and Harley raise their glasses, drinking deeply, completely unaware of the trap that has already sprung around them. As the dinner progresses, Debbie begins to talk about her advice column. She mentions a fascinating letter she recently received from a reader. She describes the letter in vivid detail, a story of a husband and his mistress who were planning to murder the husband's wife for her inheritance, using poison harvested from the wife's own garden. Cooper freezes, his fork slipping from his hand and clattering loudly against his plate. Harley's smile falters, her eyes narrowing as she looks at Debbie, trying to read her face. Debbie continues, her voice calm, conversational, and utterly terrifying. She explains how the wife in the story was an incredibly intelligent woman, a woman who saw through their clumsy, pathetic plan from the very beginning. She explains how the wife decided not to call the police because the police are slow, inefficient, and bound by rules. Instead, the wife decided to let the husband and mistress execute their plan, with a few minor adjustments. Harley tries to laugh it off, calling the story morbid and unbelievable. But as she speaks, her voice cracks. She suddenly clutches her throat, her chest heaving as she struggles to draw a breath. Her face turns a terrifying, dusky shade of purple. Her eyes bulge with sudden, violent panic. She tries to stand up, but her legs give way, and she collapses heavily onto the floor, gasping for air, her hands clawing at her throat. Cooper panics, jumping up from his chair, screaming Harley's name. He looks at Debbie, his face twisted in horror, demanding to know what she has done. Debbie sits perfectly still, taking a slow, elegant sip of her tea. She looks down at Harley, who is now convulsing on the floor, her airway completely blocked. Debbie explains, in a soft, clinical voice, that she didn't poison Harley. She would never do something so crude. Instead, she simply remembered Harley's severe, life-threatening avocado allergy. Debbie had finely pureed a fresh avocado and mixed it into the thick, savory gravy of the beef stew. Harley had eaten it greedily, completely unaware that she was ingesting a lethal dose of her own allergen. And to ensure Harley couldn't save herself, Debbie had quietly slipped into the guest bathroom earlier that evening and removed Harley's EpiPen from her purse. Harley's movements slow, her eyes rolling back, until she finally lies completely still on the dining room floor. She is dead. Cooper is weeping, hyperventilating, backing away from Debbie as if she is a demon. He screams that she is a monster, that he is going to call the police, that she is going to prison for the rest of her life. But Debbie just smiles, a cold, maternal smile. She tells Cooper to go ahead and call them. But before he does, she wants him to consider the evidence. She points to the dining room table. On the table is the burner phone Cooper used to communicate with Harley. On the screen is a drafted text message sent from Cooper's phone to Harley's number only hours earlier, claiming he couldn't take the guilt anymore and that he was going to end it all tonight. And then, Debbie points to Cooper's cup of tea. She explains that while she didn't poison Harley, she did poison Cooper. She had harvested the foxglove leaves from her garden, the very leaves Cooper had planned to use on her, and brewed them into a highly concentrated, lethal dose in his tea. Cooper looks down at his empty cup, his face draining of all color as the realization hits him. He tries to scream, to run, but his heart is already failing. The digital